All right, Shay. Would you tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself?
My name is Shay. I'm a recovering addict. Um, I live in Ronan, Montana. I was a drug addict for 16 years of my life. Um, I have an older brother, and I own my own business. Uh, I didn't. I didn't graduate high school, but I eventually got my GED in 2011, and I've been in recovery for 3 years, 6 months. Um, I have two daughters. They are currently in child protective services due to my active addiction. Their mother is still in active addiction, but I plan to reunite with them at some point in their life. My parents are still alive. They live in Pablo, Montana. And I have a whole bunch of recovering family in there in Pablo, Montana, and Ronan and Bolson. They're all throughout the reservation. I'm a first descendant from the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes.
Now, how old are you, Shay?
I'll be 39 on the 27th.
Okay, so Shay will be 39 on the 27th. You tell me a little bit about your upbringing with your father being a police officer, and of course your mom being I don't know if she was an alcoholic, addict, drug use. What are the drugs? Where were they initially first introduced to you?
Well, so my father was a tribal cop from the Flathead Reservation from the time I was born till I was about 9 years old. And my mom, she was a career bartender throughout the valley. And they're, of course, a young family. And they, from the time I could remember, they had hardship all the time. When my dad wasn't a police officer, he did everything that he could to provide for us, as did my mom. My father was a sawyer, a logger, a policeman. He also taught people how to drive semi trucks. He was a bus driver. He was a trick of all trades. And but of course they had, like every family, they had hardship, and they lived from paycheck to paycheck. Me and my brother, we spent a lot of time at home or with cousins and family members. We were pretty tight with our cousins and our grandmother and aunts and uncles, and we always seemed to get into mischief, and we're always raised by one of them to do better.
So you mentioned your brother. Are you pretty cool? Who's your brother, and are you pretty close with your brother?
My brother's name is Nick, and yeah, I feel that we're pretty close. He deals with his own addiction to alcohol, but he spent quite a bit of time in prison, and so he battles with what he battles with, but as far as relationship, I love my brother as much, to as much as I can, and it's a lot, but he has a road that he needs to go down, and I can only be there to support him as much as I can.
So
Other than that, yeah, I love my brother. I love my parents. I love my family members. And we grew up. Um, our parents gave us what we needed, and it was a good family. My life wasn't bad by no means. Childhood was growing up was I feel great. You know, um, we always got in mischief going up and finding things to do. We never were allowed in the house. You go out, find something to do. It's not like nowadays you got video games and stay in the house and do things. We always went out and found things to do, like swimming in ditches and um, throwing snowballs at cars and getting in trouble for that, and stealing cousins' motorcycles because they wouldn't let us ride them, or just
so you would say growing up here where you're at on the reservation, so you would say you had a pretty good country growing up. You were mostly outside,
yeah,
adventurous, playing with your brother, using your imagination.
yeah.
And then you grew up in a rural area or on a farm or in a suburb or
We live in a rural area. It was the farms weren't far from the town, probably a stone throw away. We did live kind of on a farm. My dad also raised pigs and cows and horses, and he was kind of a cowboy slash Indian slash farmers. He did everything, and yeah, I would say my life was pretty good as far as a child could really need at that time. I didn't really know much about active addiction. I was kind of, when we're children, we don't really think about that kind of stuff. Um, but I do know that my parents went to the bar sometimes, and my aunts and uncles, they would go spend time at the bars. And
you don't did you identify as a young child that your parents, either your mom or your father, had a problem with drugs and alcohol, or is that just something that you
um,
just identified?
at a young age, I didn't really know that they had a problem with alcohol. At the time, I just thought it was something that they did, go out and hang out with friends. But um, yeah, as I got older, I figured out that they had issues with alcoholism, and yeah.
Coming up then and watching your mom and your father both use alcohol and drugs, was it was the environment at home, was it a toxic environment or was it a functioning environment? I know you had mentioned your brother, he battles with his own choices and his own demons. Can you tell us a little bit about the environment at home?
Our home environment was pretty. It was pretty, to me, what I thought was normal. We would have dinner, and then um, we would be together, and as I got older, into my teens, um, it didn't seem to be a home environment at all. They were gone more, and at the bars, and they had their problems, but we didn't. I didn't know at the time what I didn't know what kind of things were going on in as as far as adulthood went. So yeah, to me it was pretty straight up, an all right life. My parents did fight sometimes, and there was battles going on as far as bills and things like that. But basically, it wasn't really a big thing until I was a teenager.
So And then really no knockdown, drag out fights, police always involved, toxic in and out of the house,
No.
family, so nothing like that. But generally a good childhood growing up, just
Yeah.
you got to witness upon your environment. I guess so. That was probably your first introduction to seeing drugs and alcohol. Can you tell us beyond that when you were first introduced to yourself and your self usage?
Well, so when I started experimenting with drugs was weed. It was probably when I was 11 years old, just hanging out with friends, and we would smoke pot and hang out and go do things like fishing or um, riding around in vehicles or four wheelers or things like that. But yeah, it first started when I was about 11 years old, and then I started smoking cigarettes and getting in trouble for fighting on school buses and things like that. But then I turned. Then I started hanging out with other friends and not really wanting to go home because there was things like going to babysitters and things happening at babysitters' houses that I wasn't able to talk to about my parents, and those are probably uh, some of the some of the factors on why I decided I was going to um, start smoking pot or rebelling really in my childhood life. So
So it sounded like a little bit of trauma, some sexual assault molestation. Do you want to elaborate on that? Talk about that? Are you comfortable with that now, or
yeah, so growing up, um, so this is the kind of thing that happened to me in my life was I started rebelling. My parents would have like go out to the bar or something, and they would have to um, send us to a babysitter or something, or have babysitters watch us and things. And I really didn't like to go to a couple of places because um, there were individuals there that would um, make us do things, and it kind of messed with me, and I so every time my parents would want us to go to a babysitter or something, I would reflect back on that, and it was something I didn't want to do, and so I would rebel, or um, I just wouldn't go. And after a while, it seemed like the more we went to babysitters, the more we would act out, and eventually it would cause me to not want to be home as much. And I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to because it's not something that we would talk about in our life to our parents or to anybody really, because it's a shameful act. Somebody molesting you is not the ideal thing to tell on somebody about, because it's embarrassing, and you hold that kind of thing in. After a while, you would just act out and not go to school, or it would affect your grades or um, your self esteem, and so
how old were you when all that first occurred?
I think the first time I remember was when I was 6. It was, and the funny thing about it was it was one of my cousins on my dad's side. I mean, I really didn't think nothing about it because I was a boy and she was a girl and she was older than me, and so it really didn't play a factor too much in my life. And then as I got older, it turned out to be other people, men, and those were the kind of thing that really stuck with me. Um, as a young boy, and having a man touch you and make you touch him was not something that set right in my mind, and so I didn't feel I could tell anybody about it, and it really messed with me, and so my self esteem was down, it was out, and I didn't know how to deal with it, so rebelling was the best way I knew how, and when it takes something from you, um, you really don't know what to do with it, and so drugs and alcohol after that were a good place to turn, and then you learn new ways to hide it from your parents or loved ones that you were smoking weed or um, taking pills or um, lying about where you're going so that you can go and drink pints of vodka with your friends and things like that. And but I think it really affected my brother the most because I remember my brother would he loved me enough to protect me from these individuals, and it happened to him a lot, and because he didn't want it to happen to me, so he took the brunt end of a lot of it, and um, that really sits with him. It affects him a lot to this day, I think.
So you think your brother? You look at your brother as a hero,
Yeah, I
in that
do.
aspect,
Yeah,
and so you have that.
yeah. Makes me emotional, but he goes through a lot, and unfortunately, he's still going through it. And I there's a lot of things I'd like to help him with, but I can only do so much. There's some things he has to work through too as well, and but I can only be here for him and let him know that we're all right and we're alive now. So, and I'm here for him. So
Sure. So, so you experienced some molestation. Obviously, that's you speak about that with certain members of your family. It was that a traumatic event for you that from the young age of 6 until you had mentioned what how you were like 10 or 11 when you first started experience with drugs and alcohol?
yeah, I think I was 11 when I started smoking weed, but the cigarettes was like 10 years old, and I think I got caught by my aunt one time. I was smoking behind a grain shed, and she saw me and my friends were smoking, and she told my parents. And I remember I had to go home, and but man, I really regretted it because my mom said, "You want to smoke cigarettes, and you're gonna sit here, you're gonna smoke this whole pack of cigarettes." And I was like, "No, no, I don't want to do this." And I just remember smoking that one cigarette, actually smoking it, and I got really sick, and I really didn't want to smoke cigarettes after that. But um, I thought, man, I'm not gonna do this anymore. But then um, I ended up smoking weed, and then after the weed, the cigarettes were just so much easier to get addicted to, and I still stole my mom's pack of cigarettes when she was sleeping, and I still you know, and it ended up stealing her weed whenever I saw her pants sitting on the floor, and um, I knew there was weed in it, and you know, taking $5 and so that I could go be the cool kid around my friends, and hey man, I took my mom's weed and I took some of her cigarettes, and let's go hang out. And uh, in all actuality, now that I think about it, if I would have talked about the things in my life that were going on, then I probably would have been able to. And I probably wouldn't be in the situation that I am today. But yeah.
So, kind of, so you called it be rebellion out just a little bit. You weren't able to talk to your parents about it. You weren't able to go. I guess they have school counselors. Why didn't you go to a school counselor or any of that sort? What prevented you there?
At the time, I really didn't know that. I really didn't know that there was people in school that we could talk to about things like that. And again, when those kind of things happen to you get this you get this sense of embarrassment, you know, and it's so scary to happen to you like that you get embarrassed and you don't want to talk about that kind of thing. Like, you feel like somebody's gonna laugh at you, or they're not gonna listen to you, or um, and it's just a lot easier to act out and 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 act tough. Around here, we as men, we don't, or boys, we're not supposed to cry, or we're supposed to be tough, and that kind of thing is just embarrassing and scary. So we never really talked about it.
Sure. So you so you just kind of felt it was something that you would internalize, and you just kind of accepted it and try to remain a boy, as you would say, kind of growing up there and fish. And so as let's talk about, so you started stealing marijuana and from your mom, and like you said, from the pants pocket. When did you start knowing that you wanted to, I guess, express yourself more with drugs, and then you started to get into the hardcore drugs?
Well, so from about 11 to 13, I off and on would smoke weed and do those kind of things. But then I moved out of my parents' house when I was about 14, almost 15 years old, and I started living with my friend Sam, and we started doing things like fishing and hunting and camping and things like that, because me and him were overweight kids, and he had broke his legs, so he couldn't do much. But what he could do, I could do, because we were kind of heavy set boys, and we could take our time doing things, and we didn't have to overexert ourselves. But we hung out a lot, and we were on computers a lot, and I found a friend that I could really relate with, and so I really didn't start doing. I wasn't doing drugs when I started living with them, and I lived with them till I was 19 years old, and when I moved out of there, I had a job at a bar, and I started meeting different people, and from there I felt like I wanted to have fun with these people, I wanted to know what they were doing, and it wasn't until I was 20 years old when I started smoking meth and doing pills and drinking and stuff like that.
Can you tell us the first time you tried meth and who you did it with, or is that something you don't?
When the first time I did meth was I had just gotten off work at the bar, and I was hanging out with this girl, and I didn't know where we were going as far as a relationship, and it kind of went down. It went south, and things happened, and I ended up not in the best spot. And when I got off work at the bar, I was pretty emotional, and I went home to where my mom was staying, and she was with a guy, and they were staying in his house, and I was just living in the basement, and another one of my friends was living upstairs, and every time I'd come home from the bar, they were partying, and they were doing drugs, and I just decided that this day was the day that I got off work was a pretty hard day, and emotionally, the situation that was going on in my life, and I wanted to escape, so I seen that they were smoking some meth, and I just decided I was gonna do it, and I had hoped that it was gonna make me feel different, and it did. As soon as I smoked that, I felt like Superman, and I thought, oh man, everything in my life was gonna change. And I didn't think it was gonna change the way it changed, but I felt a million miles away from my problems, and I felt like I could do anything that I set my mind to, and it was my first actual love. Like I fell in love with meth, and that I could do anything as long as I had meth with me, in my pocket or in my lungs, in my body. And
So you really liked it when you first experimented
yeah.
with it, and you really liked it, and so was it a frequent thing? Was it an everyday thing when you first got off, or when did you realize that you had a problem with methamphetamine?
So when I first tried it, it began to be a social thing. I tried to, I'd go to work, and I wouldn't spend a lot of money on it. I would, $40 here, $40 there, every other weekend, and then I it started to be every weekend, and then next thing you know, I'm calling in for work because I'm sick because I didn't I didn't I didn't go to sleep, and so I wouldn't have it, and I would start getting to the point where I would just sleep, and I would miss shifts, and then a year later I lost my job, and then I found out that a couple of my really close friends from school were also smoking meth, and we started hanging out, and it just went from there, and it was an everyday thing. We were getting high every day. We were just partying hard. We were just on top of the world. I thought we were on top of the world. We were selling drugs. We were doing drugs. We were partying, drinking, doing mushrooms. But us as we were doing that as a group. We were friends, and it just got out of control. We thought we were just unstoppable, and really we were just hurting us and our community around us. But at the time we didn't even think that it was a problem, and I really didn't think about it. I really didn't care what was going on, and then And then I got with this girl. It was the first girl I'd ever been with in my life. Sexually, she was, I was a virgin when I got with her, and I ended up getting her pregnant, and we had our first daughter, Lily. And but I was still doing drugs. I would end up leaving for days on end and getting in fights with her because I was hanging out with my friends, and eventually my friends were stupid, and I was trying to find any ways to leave so that I could go hang out with my friends because I wanted to do drugs. And I was young, and I didn't experience my life, but and I didn't know what to do, except for have fun with my friends. And so but eventually life went on. I still stayed with this girl, and we were both in active addiction, trying to raise our kids. She had an older son. He was 3 when I met her, and but we were still doing drugs. We were still trying to take care of our kids and trying to do things in our life. But the drugs were the number one thing. And just life took a turn when my second daughter was born. She was born with a severe cleft lip palate.
Is this with the same woman?
Same woman, yeah.
Same woman.
And she was, but my youngest daughter was born with a severe cleft lip palate, and we ended up having to move away to a different state, and I still couldn't control my usage in a different state even. It got worse down there, but I ended up moving back to Montana.
So where did you go at that time?
We'd moved to Salt Lake City, Utah.
And why Salt Lake?
We moved down to Salt Lake because my girlfriend had her dad lives down there, and her brothers live down there, and we had to go down there because Primary Children's Hospital was down there, and our daughter had a severe infection in her lungs.
And that was a result of drug use at the time of her.
Yeah.
So that's.
So, and she was. There was no way that we could live anywhere else. Our option was either Seattle or Salt Lake, and she had connections down in Salt Lake where we could rely on people to help take care of us, and eventually that didn't work out.
How long were you guys down there in Seattle before you?
I was probably down there for a year.
Or Salt Lake.
In Salt Lake, and I ended up coming back here because were constantly fighting, and it just wasn't working out. We were always high.
So leaving Montana to go down to Salt Lake because there was medical help for your I guess it would be your youngest daughter who had obviously medical issues because of the use of drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you relocated down there, the behavior within you and was she your wife at that time or just your girlfriend never changed? So you guys just sought the same pattern of behavior there as you were up here?
Yeah, when we moved down there, nothing changed. Just continuous active addiction, and instead of taking care of our daughter the way that we should have, we continued to do drugs. And it took a toll on us both because I blame myself for a lot of things that had happened with my daughter because I couldn't, instead of having my daughter's mom stop doing drugs, I kept feeding her drugs while she was pregnant with her. Instead of telling her no, I would just do drugs with her anyways.
Why do you think you did that? Why was that?
Because I couldn't tell her no, and I couldn't tell myself no because I was addicted to meth, and I didn't know how to tell her no, and I felt like a hypocrite if I went and did drugs and I wasn't letting her do them, you know, and I was just being selfish, and so um, a lot of the things that I did, I felt was because I didn't know how to deal with the guilt of not being able to quit doing drugs when it really meant that I should have, you know. Um,
Sure.
so
So is it codependent, toxic within the use of drugs? How was it beyond the use of drugs? Did the the drug use create any infidelity, any abuse, any of that sort? I mean, can you elaborate a little bit about that, or is it just a specifically drug relationship? And
well, so there when I as far as infidelity goes, I'd never cheat on my girlfriend at all. Um, it was all just, you know, drugs. If I did cheat on her, it was with meth. You know, I couldn't. I lied and I stole so I could get drugs, and I got drugs for us, and instead of taking care of my responsibilities, which are my children, you know, inevitably just causing me to lose my children, um, and not being the parent that I needed to be, and it caused a lot of guilt and a lot of shame, and it caused me to do things that I didn't want to do, and like leaving. You know, it was easier for me to leave because I chose drugs over my kids and my wife. You know,
so that's why I was in my ass. That's why I asked, because you had mentioned that you came back to Montana and she didn't come with you when you relocated back, and that wasn't due to infidelity, it's just to you and your decisions because of drugs, and you just knew where that was. And
yeah.
okay, I just there. And how was your main means of consumption with meth at this time? Was it
At that time I only smoked meth, and then after I left Utah, and I started hanging out with different friends up here, I started intravenous using, and after I started intravenous using it, that's when my life really turned a different page.
Can you talk about the first time you intravenously use and who you're with, if it's not?
Actually, the first time that I intravenously used, I remember I was sitting here in Montana, and I was on the phone to my ex-girlfriend down in Utah, and I remember she had told me that she had started slamming meth, and I had actually had been planning to go down and see my kids for Christmas, and when she told me that she was doing that, and when I got there, that she would notice that she had a whole bunch of miss marks on her arms, and
So what are miss marks?
miss marks are when you poke yourself with a needle and you don't hit the veins, so it causes
Sure.
bruises and lumps and stuff like that. And so when I heard her tell me that, I had in my mind and instantly decided that I was going to switch my use over to a needle. And so the day I went down to see my kids for Christmas, all that I had on my mind was that I was going to try shooting meth up in a needle.
So she was a needle user before you were, and you guys had conversated about it. And
Well, we didn't really conversate about it. She had just told me that had been doing it, and in my mind, I had made a conscious decision that I was going to do it. It was nothing. She actually didn't want me to do that stuff. She knew that trying it that way was going to take me down a road that I didn't want, that I probably wouldn't be able to come back from. But in my mind, I had subconsciously decided that I was going to do it because she did it, and there were things going on in our relationship that I had just decided it would probably be easier if I did what I wanted, you know. And you know, like my heart was broken. There was things in my life that I couldn't understand. I couldn't make my life better, and I thought that solution would be trying intravenously shooting up meth. And I remember sitting in her bathroom with one of her friends, and I'd asked him to shoot me up, and as soon as he did, and I'd watched him do it, and I thought, man, I could do this by myself. And so I did, and as soon as I did, and I felt totally different. I was off and running, nothing in, and I fell deeper in love with meth.
So you instantly liked what you felt. Yeah. You instantly knew that.
I knew that there was no other way that I was going to do meth from there.
Can you explain the euphoria you felt from the typical other ways that you did it?
I think the fact that I was able to control when I got high, how I got high, and the poke into the skin was the rush for me. But as soon as the drug got in there and I felt that rush, and I'd start to puke, and I'd feel this euphoria of my hair tingling and my body getting warm, and the feeling of not my life leaving my body, but all my cares in the world leaving my body, and I was numb, cold, and my mind was racing in a different way. It wasn't thinking about shoulda, woulda, couldas, and what happened back in the past years. The shame and guilt was gone. I was actually numb, and I didn't have to worry about what was going on in my life. And that's what I was chasing, and I was chasing that every time, and that's when I got hooked. I was hooked for what it felt like to me forever.
So you say chasing, like just trying to erase things, or just chasing? Can you explain a little bit about what you mean?
Well, I was chasing the next high, just chasing the next numb feeling.
So it instantly just hooked you, and you just wanted to continue.
Yeah, it took me to outer space. Basically, it took me out of my body to a different. I didn't have to think. I didn't have to react. I didn't have to do anything that I didn't want to do, and what I wanted to do was meth, and that was basically it.
Sure.
I didn't want to take care of any responsibilities in my life.
So did you instantly become just an everyday needle user? Did your life... What was the difference between your life once you started to be a needle user compared to the other means of consumption that you had taken at the time?
As soon as I started using a needle, it was lying, cheating, stealing, and by any means and all means to get high.
So demoral than from where you were before. You never...
I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to think. I didn't care whether I hurt you or her or him or them or anybody. I was getting that next fix. I wanted to feel that rush. I wanted to feel that heat. I wanted to feel that numbness, and all my moral compass was just shot. I just if you had money to get a bag, I could get the bag, and I would go get the bag, and I'd never bring it to you. I would do it myself. I'd steal from you. I'd lie about what I needed money for. I didn't pay my bills. I'd go to work for a week just so I could get a good paycheck, so I wouldn't have to, so that I could buy drugs. And then it just went from there. It was just a vicious circle. And
so
all I cared about was meth.
So just from the moment that you took the needle, you found yourself chasing that rabbit hole. It's kind of say your life kind of changed significant. So the people probably, were they different that you hung out with before? Was there, or were they? I mean, were they the same? Did everybody start using needles at that time, or was there something that you did and you saw other people? Or
they're basically the same people, but yeah, they all use needles too, and funny thing about it was we were all the same people. We were just doing the same things to each other, you know, hanging out with each other and stealing from each other just so we can get high, and or we would band together so that we could go steal stuff from other people so we could sell it so we could get high. And it was always the same shit, different day.
Sure. So just a constant cycle of
Yeah.
getting high, kind of the same actions of behavior. Can you is there any significant thing that within your needle use that you could, I guess, identify with as maybe being trauma or tragic or something that experience? Something like overdose. Did you see anybody kind of do anything of that? Were you part of it? Did you ever OD yourself or?
So, when as far as using needles and doing meth was, I never really saw any of that stuff until I started doing heroin. And
So when did you go to the heroin from the meth use?
I went to heroin when I couldn't get high off meth anymore. I had got to the point where I was waking up in the morning and my hands wouldn't work. I didn't have enough vein. My veins were shot, and I couldn't get high anymore. It would take a gram of meth just so I could wake up, another gram of meth just to get my hands to work, and another gram of meth just to get high, all within an hour. And that's about, and I couldn't get high, and it wouldn't last that long. And so I sought out something different, and that was heroin. And I remember the first time I took a shot of heroin, it was on Father's Day, and I woke up and I was sick, and I was feeling like crap because everything had been coming back on me. All my decisions in my life were coming back to haunt me, and I wasn't able to talk to my kids, and I felt like crap because I wasn't the best father that I could be, and I wanted to die. I wanted to see my kids, but I couldn't see my kids. I wanted to die. So I went over to a friend's house, and they weren't able to see their children either. And I just remember walking in there and asking if I could sit there for a while, because it wasn't a good day. It was Father's Day, and I wasn't able to see my kids. And all these emotions were running through my head. And he had asked me if I wanted to do some heroin with him. And I said, sure, I'll smoke some. And he said, no, I'm not smoking it. I'm shooting it up. So if you want some, then you're going to have to shoot it up. And I said, that's fine. And I just remember shooting it in my arm, and it was just the worst and best feeling I ever felt in my life. My whole existence and everything in my mind was gone. I didn't worry about anything. And I officially fell in love with, and then I was off and running. It was heroin. And then I started pushing heroin, and I started doing it every day. And I had a house that I had some friends living with in, and I just remember one day sitting in my room, and a shipment of heroin came in, and this person walked into my house and started handing out heroin, and one of my friends that was living with me had been feeding out pretty hard, and he was sick, and but he had no money, and so he begged this person for some heroin, and that person gave it to him and said, now be careful because this is really potent stuff. And I remember standing in my kitchen, and my friend comes in, and he was panicking, and he asked me to go get his inhaler because his chest was burning and he couldn't breathe. And I asked him why, and he said, "Because I think I'm overdosing on some heroin. I just did a big old shot in the driveway, and I can't breathe." And so I ran into his room and I was looking for his inhaler. In the house, there was a house full of people, and I ran into his room to find his inhaler, and I couldn't find his inhaler, and so I ran back out, and he was slumped over in my hallway behind my couch, and he was death. He just had this deathly gray look on his face, and he was shallow breathing, and he was trying to talk to me and ask me to get him some Narcan because he couldn't breathe. And we didn't have any Narcan in the house, so I started yelling at everybody, and somebody called 911, and so I just got this sense of adrenaline in my body, and I got started getting scared, and I picked him up and I brought him into the shower, and I turned the water on cold water, and I was yelling at everybody to call 911, and he kept looking at me, and he was telling me he didn't want to die. And I kept holding him in the cold water. And I told him, if you just keep on talking to me, you're not going to die. And I kept yelling, somebody call 911. And he kept saying he didn't want to die. And I said, you're not going to die here today. We're going to get you to the hospital. We're going to get you some help. And everybody started fighting in the house about what they were going to do. And all I could yell at him was just call 911. And he was going in and out of consciousness, and there was no time. And so we pulled him out of the shower and brought him out into the car. And I put him in the car in the front seat and put the seatbelt on him and told the person that was driving the car, and I said, now drive to the hospital as fast as you can, and don't let him die. And that was the last time I saw my friend. The next call was from another friend that said he had died in the car on top of Skyline going to the hospital. And my whole and everything about that was just my whole demeanor, my whole everything just hit my toes, and I was gone. I was shocked, and I just remember laying in bed, and I was crying, and I heard this loud beating on the back door, and the cops were here at my house, and they were beating on the back door, telling me to open the door. And when I opened the door, they swarmed in my house and basically raided us, and told me that my friend was dead, and if we would have just called 911, they would have been able to save his life. But that didn't stop me from keep on doing heroin. By then I was farther into my use, and one of my friends, his name is Steven, got out of jail, and he would come over every day, and he would ask me if I was ready to go into recovery, and I would tell him no, and I'd lock the door, and I would continue to do heroin and steal and lie and cheat and do everything that I could to get the drugs. And all I wanted to do was just drown myself in sorrow. And eventually, it got to the point where I was tired of being sick and tired because I had done so much drugs that my life was going downhill. You know, I'd alienated my relationship with my father, and I had a good opportunity to have a business that my dad had built that he wanted that wanted me to take care of. And instead, I wanted to do drugs because I wanted to escape all the choices that I had made in my life that um, eventually caused my downfall. But I didn't want to die. That was the thing. I didn't want to die. And even though I was killing myself with the drugs, I just didn't want to die. I wanted to live. And it took my best friend Steven to keep on coming and crawling through my window day in and day out, even through the active addiction that was going on in my house, and begging me, let's go to a meeting. It starts with a meeting. Let's go fishing. I'll get you some food. We'll go do this. We don't want to see you die. You have friends and family that love you, and if you don't do this, then nobody else can. And then I was with a girl, and at that time I was with this girl, and we had started fighting a lot because she wanted to get clean, and I didn't know how to support her in that endeavor. And every time I would try to get clean, she didn't want to get clean, and eventually I ended up beating her up because I don't know why, but I ended up beating her up and breaking her nose and going to jail. And in jail, I just remember praying to God that He'd take this need and this want for me to do drugs and to have a better life, take it away from me. And if He took this need and this want away, then I would do the best that I could to honor my prayer. And 4 days later, I got released from jail, and I did one, and I got high one more time, and I just remember getting high again, and I asked again to take the need and the want for me to get high, take it away from me because I was done. And when I woke up the next day, it was June 20th of 2020. And when I woke up, I wasn't sick. I wasn't hurt. I had no need, no want to get high anymore. And I had made my mind up that I was going to do everything in my power to stay clean. Because if I would go to any lengths to get high, I would go to any lengths to stay clean. And I started going to meetings, and I started doing everything that I was asked to do, and that was take care of my mental health and everything that happened to me in my childhood, to address it and figure out where I got the ball rolling in my life and why I made the mistakes and the choices, and since then I've been 3 years and 6 months clean.
3 years and 6 months clean. So since that day you got out of jail, and after that one usage, and then that following day. So, wow, that's a revelation of where you're at now. So what would you call that? I know this is some looking at recovery, and for those people that are afraid to go into recovery because they, some share a similar story with the one that you have, that might use because trauma, some might not because of trauma, but they use and they don't know how to ask for help, and they don't know where to go or who to go. And that's one of the reasons why you had wanted to put together these podcasts, is the ability to kind of outreach to other people. So that first initial thing of asking, your heart, would that be considered your higher power? Would that be considered God? I mean, how does that look to you, and in the steps there? And then maybe if you could elaborate about when you worked the program, what steps you took and how you took it, and the mentors or the peer support or those that were.
So when I prayed to God. God is my higher power. I prayed to God. Because that's what I needed in my life. I needed to come to find a power greater than myself, and for me, that's God. Um, I started going to meetings, and the meetings helped me because there's a lot of literature in there about addicts helping other addicts, um, and going through steps to help us realize our shortcomings and um, things that steps that we need to take to figure out who we are as an addict, and what we can do to change that.
Sure. So that would be considered your. Is there a step in that? What you would call that first step there in a program of Narcotics Anonymous? Surrendering to the total, just you're defeated and you've had enough, and now you're just
Yeah.
willing to put in the work.
So for me, it was I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I needed something different in my life. So I basically surrendered to a process. Um, there was somebody in my life that cared for me, that wanted me to go to these classes.
And that was your friend Steven?
My friend Steven. And and I remember he came to me to pick me up one day for to go fishing, and he said, "I'm going to take you fishing because there are things that we wanted to do in our life that we could do clean and sober." So we went fishing, and he said, "While we're fishing, we're going to eat some food, and then we're going to read this book."
What was the book?
And the book was a book from Narcotics Anonymous.
Sure.
And I said, "Okay, we'll do that." And we started reading the book, and I remember he said, "We could do this every day if you want to." And I said, "Yeah, I think I'm ready for that." And it stuck with me what he said. And he said, "In order to have something you never had before, you got to do something you never done before." And it blew me away because everything that I wanted in my life that I've never had, I've never tried to keep it, and and I've never tried anything new. I've always done things that I knew how to do, but I could never keep those things, and that's something I wanted to do. And so every day I get up, no matter what I want to do, and I would go down to the recovery hall, and I would take these self-help classes, and I worked through recovery dynamics, and we went through the steps, and I learned everything that I needed to learn about myself and how I could fix this problem. And I go to mental health, and I would go to these classes, and I would see an LAC every week, every day, and I would go to these self-help step 12-step programs and work on myself to figure out where I missed the mark and how I could fix myself so that I could be a better productive person in society, and learn different ways on how I could treat other people the way I wanted to be treated.
So was that something that you self-initiated it? Steve had kind of told you the resources to go to, or is that something that you're forced to go to?
No, I wasn't. I went to jail, and I did catch some charges, but before I was asked to do anything, I kind of took initiative to put myself in a different situation because I wanted something new. But he did show me, he did plant the seed, he did basically hold my hand and show me a different way to live, and to the point where then I could stand up for myself and do my things for me, so that I could so freely give away what was so freely given to me.
So it sounds like you got a lot of gratitude for Steven.
Yeah.
To kind of pull you into your life. So now you're now you're in recovery. Say you're putting into work. You're seeing an LAC, mental health. You're going to these 12-step programs. What is your life starting to look like for you? I guess in recovery.
Well, so since I've been 3 years, 6 months clean, I've I have my own business. I'm able to. I work for the Never Alone Recovery Support Services as compliance manager. Um, that helps with sober living village, sober living for men and sober living for women on the reservation. I'm an outreach director for the Never Alone Recovery Support Services board of directors. I'm able to be a mentor for people that are coming into this program. I also get to be a part of people's lives that are going through drug court for Lake County District Drug Court. I'm able to be a mentor and to them. I have fantastic family. I have fantastic friends. There's a lot of people that look up to me. So
you say your life is generally just positive
yeah.
and where you want to be now. And
when I first came into this program, they asked me where I thought I would see myself in 5 years, and I thought, man, I'll probably be relapsed and still trying to get myself on my feet, but I totally had sold myself short because I own my own business, and I able to employ people 2 jobs that are in recovery with my business. Also, another one of my good friends that's coming into recovery. He's one of my employees. I get to walk this walk with friends and family that I've used with, and actually give them a chance to live a better life as well. So I couldn't ask for a better life.
What are some words that you could share for people that are afraid to ask? Because there's that you mentioned, the Never Alone recovery services that you're employed with, peer support for, and some 12-step programs, mental health. For people that don't know how to find those resources or might be afraid to get into recovery, what are some words of encouragement or any words you want to share there?
Well, like I've always heard, in order to have something you never had before, you got to do something you've never done before. If there's anything in your life going on that you don't think that you can talk about, there's always resources. We have resources for mental health, housing, addiction counseling, and self-help classes. There's always somebody there that you can talk with. Just if you need somebody to be there with you, never give up on yourself, and always shoot for the stars.
What is the name of your business that you do aside from the NARSS?
Drain Tech Solutions.
So that's your business, your independent business.
Yep.
And you just can you elaborate a little bit on that?
So,
what you do there with that?
The Never Alone Recovery Support Services started a self-sustainability program, and so that they could help recovering addicts that had a skill start a business and get gainful employment. And so the executive director, Don Roberts, he asked me what I thought would be a good skill that I have that could help with employment sustainability. And I told him that, that there was a lot of drain cleaning and sewer business in the Flathead Valley that would be a good job. And so he walked me through the right steps to get my contractor's license and insurance and a tool list and business cards and everything that I would need to be to start my own business. And so he called some people in and we talked about it, and I took all the right steps that I needed to so that I could start my business. And so now I run this business that it's a business for doing or cleaning out clogs in sewer pipes, locating sewer tanks, maintenance on pumps and things like that, throughout the Mission Valleys.
Something that you wouldn't have got, you don't think, if you hadn't been in recovery?
Well, the thing is, that's the job my father built up when he wanted me to take over, was a drain cleaning business. He got a van, he got all the tools so that I would always have some type of work to go on. But at the time I was just too far into drugs to take it over. And once I got into recovery, then I was able to spend more time being able to spend more time at this job and actually working at this job and being able to be a better person in society so I could even run my own business. And if it wasn't for him showing me all the ropes in it, then I wouldn't know what I was doing, and I wouldn't be able to show other people how to do this job either.
So a combined effort of family business and then
Yeah.
your recovery to help you keep you focused, to pay attention to the pertinence of it. Shay, where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years from today going forward?
Where do I see myself in another 3 to 5 years? I'm hoping my projection would be that I'm continuing on this recovery path, and that hopefully that I will have a more substantial business, so that I can employment, so that they can give back in their recovery and be stronger in theirs. And I just continue on the road that I'm on, because it makes me happy to give back what was so freely given to me.
Sure, well, you can get it. You keep putting in the hard work, and it sounds to me like you come a long ways from where you were to where you're at now, and some pretty relative points to measure your life by, and a significant change. Is there anything else you'd like to say, or?
That's it.
That's it. Well, Shay Ashley, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Welcome.
All right.